I know what you're thinking. What are you doing in a car, Stu? This is supposed to be hiking videos. Well, for this episode, I'm going to be tracing the route of the Taylor-Massey Creek through Scarborough, and for that, I'm going to need a vehicle. Taylor-Massey Creek starts here at Terraview Park on the western edge of Scarborough. It all begins with this pond. It contains water runoff, and to be honest, it's not that clean if I pan down, and that goes for the creek in general. There are restoration efforts underway to try to clean it up, but that's the first stop off. I'm going to go back to the car now, and we'll trace the route of this creek as it weaves through Scarborough, eventually ending at the Don River, where we'll finish this video. Let's go. To find a welcome in the wild. I am back at the creek now, which is just starting to form behind me before it heads into a large pond again. This is just a quick stop off. I'm going to head back to the car again. The reason being, the creek shortly goes underground as it weaves through residential areas. There's man-made channels, and it doesn't really come out again until around about Kennedy and Lawrence, Warden and Lawrence, that kind of area. I'm going to skip past that and maybe go to the Kennedy and Eglinton area, and we'll take a look at the creek there. Before I go back to the car, I noticed this tree, which I thought I'd show you. It's a crabapple tree, but it's kind of unusual. You'll see some of the fruit is green as those crab apples are starting to form. Some of them are orange. And the reason for this is, unfortunately, this tree has a kind of rust disease, cedar apple rust disease. I'm going to head back to the car now, and we'll move on to follow the route of the creek. I'm now in the Kennedy and Eglinton area, walking down into a ravine, so I can show you the creek again. It actually goes through some storm drains behind me, because it goes underneath some rail tracks. So still not that pretty, but as you can see, the creek is starting to take shape now. Okay, so back to the car another time. After here, the creek goes through Pine Hill Cemetery. I'm not going to film there, out of respect. I don't really want to be walking through a graveyard with camera equipment. So I'm going to skip to a park just south of there and pick up the creek again, where it's going to start looking a lot more attractive than it has so far. Back to the car. Yeah, it's fine, everything's fine. You got a nice little white spot on your head. I'm at St. Clair Ravine now, and as you can see, the Taylor-Massey Creek is starting to look like a proper creek. It's still quite loud here with traffic, so it's not very serene or isolated here, but we're getting closer. I'm going to continue walking through this park. As you can see, I'm back in my car. I got to the end of the St. Clair Ravine, and now I'm at Warden Woods, at Warden and St. Clair. The Gus Harris Trail weaves through Warden Woods. By the way, Gus Harris was an old MP for the area. The creek, the Taylor-Massey Creek around here, it feels less restrained, so there's more habitat Let's go take a look. The Taylor-Massey Creek is actually named after two families, surprisingly enough, the Taylors and the Masseys. The Taylors moved to Upper Canada from Uttoxeter, Staffordshire, England, and they set up a paper and pulp business on the banks of the Don River. One of his brothers went on to build the Don Valley Brickworks. And then the Massey family are half of Massey Ferguson, which is a company that produces farm equipment, tractors and such. That sound you can hear is a very shy bird called a catbird. So called because of the sound it makes. It's actually scolding me because I think I'm near to a nest. So the only sound it's going to make right now is that kind of cat meow sound. But they are actually good at mocking other birds. They will mimic the calls of other birds when they're singing. I'm coming to the end of the Gus Harris Trail now. At the end of the trail there's a golf course which is private property, so I'll be skipping that and going to Taylor-Massey Park next. It's actually a bit of a bugbear of mine. There's a lot of private property in Canada, especially this close to the city, so it means a lot of rivers and creeks aren't accessible if they pass through that private land. But let's not complain about that too much. So I'm now in Taylor-Massey Park and it's actually a new day. I ran out of time at the end of Warden Woods. It's a little bit overcast today. I'm hoping we'll make it before the storm starts. So it's the longest stretch so far, but I think we can make it. So let's take a look at what we've done so far. Taylor-Massey Creek starts at Terraview Park at a couple of ponds. It then weaves through Scarborough a little bit to a residential area before going underground. It comes back up around about Lawrence Avenue near Crockford Boulevard, which we skipped. We picked it back up again at Eglinton Avenue, where it goes under some railway tracks. It then weaves through Pine Hill Cemetery, then into St Clair Ravine, where we walked as far as Warden Woods. As it weaves through Warden Woods, it then reaches a golf course, which of course we skipped, and now Taylor-Massey Park, which is where we find ourselves today. Canada is of course known for many things, but one of the main ones is the maple leaf and maple syrup. Maple syrup comes from sugar maple trees. There are many different types of maple tree. Sugar maple is just one of them. Silver maple is another. Norway maple is another. And it's actually Norway maples and sugar maples that are hardest to tell apart. The easiest way, if you come across a maple tree, is to pluck a leaf, assuming it's summer. If you then take a look at the stem, this milky substance means that this is a Norway maple. A sugar maple doesn't give off any kind of milky substance. There might be a little bit of clear liquid, but for the most part, nothing from a sugar maple. And from a Norway maple, this creamy substance, this white milky substance. Just behind me is a silver maple, just in case you thought I was making it up. Silver on the back, green on top, like leaves are. Hi, I'm hiding under a tree. Just heard thunder and it's just about to start raining, so unfortunately I'm going to have to cut this hike short. I'm going to head back to the car and cheat, and I'm going to drive to the place where Taylor-Massey joins the Don River. To be fair, I was already about 3/4 of the way, so I'm just skipping the last little bit. So I'm going to run to the car now, and I'm not going to film that because I'll look stupid. Okay, so I may have cheated a little bit to avoid the weather, but I'm almost at the confluence of Taylor-Massey Creek and the Don River. It's a little bit noisy here. The Don Valley Parkway is just above and behind me. It's a major highway north-south through Toronto. So the creek is a lot wider here than when we first started, when it was just a pond. And although it's still not that clean, we have seen signs of life. There was the heron that I filmed earlier. I've just had 2 kingfishers fly past me, and in the mud down here I see raccoon tracks, although raccoons pretty much get everywhere. They're pretty tenacious and famous here in Toronto. I highly recommend watching the episode of Planet Earth 2 featuring the raccoons of Toronto. Here's the prints here, I'll show you. I'm now at the confluence of the Don River and Taylor-Massey Creek. I'm going to try and not fall in. As entertaining as that would be for you. So behind me is Taylor-Massey Creek, and as I rotate, you're looking upstream of the Don River. And I continue to rotate on this tiny piece of sand that I'm sinking into. It's more like mud. That's downstream of the Don River, which eventually empties into Lake Ontario. Maybe in a future episode I'll hike the Don River. I have done it before without filming it. It's not a small undertaking. I think it took me 2 or 3 days. Don River branches into east and west, so it's not a small undertaking. But I'll talk more about the Don River in a future episode and the source of that and such. But that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing. There's an icon on the screen. Let's put it there. Click on that icon to subscribe. Thank you for watching. At BritHikesOntario, Instagram, Facebook, etc.
It's open and free, and it's waiting for me.